capital. We're at about 20 million AUM, done about 9 syndications. We're doing multiple different asset classes now with more so of a focus on industrial. Myself personally, I spend a lot of time on finding deals, analyzing deals, and asset management. Those are kind of my main focuses, but it's a great business. I've loved syndication. There's no way I would have gotten to where I'm at now without this model. It's a great way to scale quicker. It's a great way to get other people involved in real estate and just economies of scale in general. So I'll give kind of some brief intros on the 4 speakers we have here. I know Mike probably covered some of this, but first we got Roschelle McCoy. She's been investing since 2017 and currently controls over $6 million in assets in the states of Florida and Illinois. She is focused on creating safe, affordable workforce housing in emerging markets across the country. Next is Daniel Umstead. He's the founder of the Robert Nathaniel Group, which operates the RNG radio show. And it looks like they're doing quite a bit over there. I was looking into it a little bit. They go over topics such as credit repair, real estate, resume writing, and motivational tips for success. Next is Eric Nelson, is the founding principal of Wild Oak Capital. Has been investing in real estate for over 10 years. So has some experience with some market cycles here. He's a co-owner also of a civil engineering firm and has a range of skills that suit the field of syndication and real estate on both the technical level and client relation side. So those are the 3. Sorry, I think I said 4 at the beginning. Those are our three panelists. So we're just gonna get right into it. So I'm gonna kind of go into. I got some questions here. Feel free if there's any additional questions you want me to expand on, feel free to type them in the chat box, and happy to relay those messages as well. So let's start off. So we'll start with, I'll just go on the row I'm looking at right now. I'll start with Roschelle. Can you provide further context on your real estate experience so far and what led you to want to get into the syndication model?
Yeah, absolutely. So I, similar to you, Brock, started off with doing some smaller investments. So my first acquisition, actually, let me back up before I even made the decision to get into real estate, period. I've worked a W-2 job for, the past 20 some years, and was in a situation about 5 or 6 years ago where my job was eliminated. And so I thankfully was moved into another role in my company. So I was never fully unemployed, but just the fact that one day I had this great, what I thought was a very secure job at a very good company, suddenly was just not there the next day. So that my husband and I had been talking about real estate for many, many years, but that was really my jumpstart to actually take action and start really looking into it further and making a plan. Because if, the next time my job was eliminated at my company, if I really was unemployed, I had no backup plan at that point in time, right? So, so we spent about, I would say, 8 to 9 months just doing research and learning about real estate. Our first purchase was a 4-plex. So we wanted to go a little bit bigger than just a single family, but obviously things like multifamily, really, large multifamily, I should say, were really not even in our path or in our vision at the time, just because you don't realize that average people buy apartment buildings, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so we bought this 4-plex. It went fairly well. We actually had one of our tenants that was so happy with how we were running and managing that 4-plex. She asked us if we would be interested in buying a couple properties across the street. I said, "Are they for sale?" She said, "No, but I think the owner's elderly and wanting to get out of it." So fast forward a couple of years when it was at a time when the owners did want to sell that property. We were the first ones I called. We got it off market. And so we purchased a couple additional 4-plexes on that same street and then continued to buy some single family and other things local to where we live. After doing that for about 3 years, realized that while those were providing a decent amount of cash flow, they really weren't going to get me to my financial dreams in the time period that I wanted. When we first started investing in real estate, the focus was really having a backup plan. Should one of us lose our jobs or become unemployed for any reason. And over the course of those few years in our early investing years, our vision really shifted from a backup plan more to financial freedom. So as that vision shifted, we realized that what we were doing on a day-to-day basis had to shift too. We had to change if we wanted the outcome and the output of that to change as well. So that's what brought us into multifamily. So since we've decided to invest in multifamily, I've now been a limited partner on 3 different deals, and I'm a general partner in a 40 unit down in Tampa, Florida.
Awesome. I love it. And that's a common way a lot of people get into this business as well, like you did with investing as an LP first. It's a great way to kind of, especially a lot of operators are willing to really like show you the behind the curtains if you invest with them, right? So you can ask questions and see how they're operating these deals. So I've seen that as a common way to a lot of people break into the space as well as investing as an LP first.
Yeah, it
Daniel.
really is. You learn so much just by going through the process. Obviously, you don't see every detail of the operations of an asset because you're not in that general partnership. But like you said, if you work with a team that allows you to kind of peek behind the curtain, if you will, you can get access to some of that and really see the inner workings of how it all functions. And it's a really great way to get some experience.
Totally. Yeah. And you're making return on your capital too. It's an investment at the end of the day. So it's great.
Yep.
Okay. Daniel, you want to share your perspective on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, first and foremost, just, thank you, Brock, for moderating this, even more so Mike Morawski, just for bringing me on. I'm really the guy a year from now that you're going to be like, wow, I was able to actually hear from him as a panelist. And where he's grown to. My real estate experience is really on the residential side. I've really only had my hand in a few transactions for the past 3 years that I have been doing real estate. And, you just hear the same cycle over and over again. Oh, well, my credit is shot. I'm not going to be able to purchase a home right now. Can you come back to me in 4 to 5 months once I do make that progress? So hearing that same story over and over again, dragging the quote unquote investors who are like, yeah, can you take me to this property and that property, just got really tiresome. So I moved over to the syndication model, and that was really just by connecting with individuals. And that's really what I'm going to be speaking on during this panel. Right now, I'm connected with individuals like, of course, Mike Morawski, Rod Cleve, and a few other, apartment multifamily gurus. And the purpose of that is there's going to be so much content out there, and I was just stuck on everything. Real estate in itself is that shiny object, and if you don't pinpoint as far as what you're looking for as you're getting started, you're going to be all over the place. You're going to be like, well, I need to help somebody with credit repair, and that's what I did. I started with the radio show, starting with the credit repair, thinking like, all right, well, I could change millions of lives doing this. And then it moved over to, another facet of wholesaling, like, oh, well, I can learn how to do wholesaling. So when you're in this space, figure out what your passion is. But the only way to do that, and I'm realizing this now, is you need to talk to the folks that are in it, that are actually doing it. So, connecting with Roschelle, connecting with Eric, connecting with Brock, and asking them like, hey, what should my next steps be? So as I've already done my YouTube University courses, I'm now in that stage of next steps. I've connected with the multifamily investor right now. He has a 26 unit apartment building out in Arkansas that he's currently doing fundraising for. So it's like, hey, I have this individual in my back pocket. Another person I'm connected with who's locally based out in Philadelphia is currently looking for 2 to 10 units. These individuals that I have their direct cell numbers. In addition, we're actually running another podcast together called Building Blocks for Apartment Investing. So feel free to check that out at bb4ai.com. But really, what you're going to be getting from me, it's like, okay, what am I supposed to do next? After I've done all my YouTube courses, you need to start talking to people. So thank you, Brock.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in today's day and age, putting out content is king. I mean, you'll gain a lot of exposure and a lot of connections by putting out content. So that's always good. And
copy and paste. That's the trick right there. You see somebody on LinkedIn that's already got the information about, cap rates and what an accredited investor should do and shouldn't do. Take that same information or even just share it. You want folks to come to you to have that conversation with you.
Absolutely. I agree. Eric?
Yeah, Daniel, I loved a lot about what you just said. So I'm excited to kind of build there. And Roschelle, I have a similar kind of background, right? So like, maybe I started a little earlier, honestly. I bought my first house in college kind of just completely by chance. Like my brother and I were kind of tired of paying rent to somebody. I did a little quick math and I realized, well, we could actually buy a house and own a house and pay the same amount and rent it out to our friends. And this was in 2007. So lending was a little looser back then. We actually got a loan as college students, but that was kind of my first foray into like the investment, right? But then it grew, and similar to Roschelle, I bought a couple of single families, then a quad, and then a sixplex. And what I was really specialized in that kind of realm was owner financing, or maybe some non-traditional financing methods so that we could get into the property with low capital down. And that was kind of a trick, or maybe just a tool I was using, as long as I was purchasing right, where the leverage to the actual price was not terrible. But all that to say, eventually I got to the same position where I said, well, these things are nice, but they're kind of a lot of work, and they're not really getting me to my cash flow dreams, right? So a good friend of mine basically was doing this, and I got really lucky to get to know him closer. He was hosting a meetup. To Daniel's point, I just kind of put myself out there and connected with him. I was like, this is what I want to do. You're doing that. How can I help you? And so he said, well, you can help me run this meetup. And I was like, well, sure, I'll do all of it. So I started running the meetup for him, and got, that was kind of more or less value I could add, right? And then I could show up every month and pick his brain before and after the meeting. And then I realized that was a good place to be. It was put yourself in the room with someone who's doing something you want to do, right? So that's kind of what I did, and we've had really good success. So in the last year, we have done 6 syndications. We have about 30 plus million under management. So we've had really good success, but it's also just by using the tools people to tell you to do. So it's in rooms like this where it's hard to imagine, being there or being like 5 years from now, but it's absolutely doable. And to Rochelle's point too, is like, it's just average people doing it. There's nothing special about us. We just took the action, right? So if you listen to what people are telling you here, and you take action, and you do it with the right education, you can absolutely do it.
I totally agree. I mean, I think a lot of people think there's work involved, right? There's some complexity to syndication, but it's, at the end of the day, it's a simple model. You're obviously taking on additional responsibility by taking other people's capital, but it's a great way. It's pretty simple once you figure out the formula of how it's done. I mean, it's a pretty simple business. So tagging on that, and we'll just run it right back to you again, Eric, here, and go back the other way. For the people on the call that are trying to get into syndication, what would be like your advice for the first actionable step someone can take to start getting into this industry?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, the first thing is education. So if you're here, you're doing the right thing. And then Daniel, I love what you said. Kind of the next thing is start putting yourself out there. So what my coach told me was, you got to start acting like an apartment investor, even if you're not actively doing it yet, right? So you start telling people, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm looking at deals, I'm going to markets. Even if you be honest, of course, but tell people I'm an apartment investor, because you technically are, even if you're not in the game, right? Start telling people you'll have these opportunities. And sometimes that can have a bit of an imposter syndrome alongside with it, because you're like, well, I don't really do this, but you have to start putting yourself out there as that person. Again, Daniel shared, like, share content, create content, and that comes from education, right? And then people will start hearing about you. And then pretty soon, when you find the deal, then you've got a little bit of a following to people won't be surprised when you say, hey, I'm buying an apartment building. Would you like to invest with me? It'll be more like, oh yeah, I've seen your content and I've seen a lot of your Facebook stuff or whatever, Instagram stuff. And so they're not shocked when you go to raise capital. So I think the first actionable step is education. If you're here, you're doing it. Second of all is, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. You are and will be an apartment investor. You got to start telling your friends and family. And you got to sometimes let go of maybe your identity a little bit, right? So I was an engineer, that's my background. I'm currently basically stepped away from that, similar to you, Brock, so congratulations. But I had to kind of more or less let go of that identity of an engineer and step into this, I'm a real estate investor, and that can be challenging. So I encourage you, start telling people what you're doing, and then get the education. And those are probably the first 2 steps.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Daniel, you want to share some insight there?
Yeah, pretty much exactly what Eric had said, and thanks for noting that. It's really, the actionable steps needs to be specific. That was my struggle in the beginning as far as getting started. It's like, well, where should I go to? Who should I source? So one tip that I'll provide is figure out where you can get leads at. In addition to the education, in addition to, because you don't want to get a lead and then, all of a sudden have a potential person that's looking to sell their 10-unit apartment building. And they're like, yeah, but do you know what I could get return on this? Or do you know what the market is? Or they may come back to you and say like, oh yeah, it's worth 1.5 million. And you're like, okay, great. And then of course you're trying to go to another investor and say like, hey, I got a property deal that's worth 1.5 million. Meanwhile, you didn't do your homework on it. So make sure you're doing your homework, you understand, and this is definitely the place to start. You're already at the summit, so you're already getting the basic foundation. But the moment that you feel strong enough or even dangerous enough to go off on the next steps, figure out where you can get these leads from, who you can lean on, and start sharing, and be specific. If you're looking between a 5 to 10 unit building, Class B property, minor repair, light repair, then you need to lead with that. Don't just say that, oh, I'm looking for an apartment building, because nobody is going to be understanding, because you want to be going to a shoe store and say, oh, I just need a size 12 shoe. They're going to know, well, what color are you looking for? Are you looking for the newest model? Are you looking for the latest model? Are you okay with the used pair of shoes? So you have to be specific when you're reaching out, and be clear about it. And if you got questions on it, hey, is a B property something I should be looking for in the Philadelphia area or wherever you're at? Start asking around so you can get that. But first education, next step, figure out where you can get those leads from.
Yeah, I agree. Defining your buy box. I mean, there's having a strategy of what you want to buy. Because multifamily is a big space, right? A, B, C. I mean, you got classes, what sort of value add deals you're trying to do. So really honing in on, this is the kind of deal I want to do. That goes a long way with brokers too, when you start talking to brokers looking for those deals. Roschelle, you want to share some insight there as well?
Yeah, so you guys are going to hear a real common theme here. I think a lot of it, as we all agree, starts with education. So making sure that you spend the time, and there's no magical amount of time, right? It's different for every person and your learning styles and your needs, or where you're already at or not at in your real estate journey. But spend time getting yourself educated. And there's a ton of free content out there, free courses. You can pay for them. You can do coaching and mentoring either at a paid level, or sometimes you're fortunate enough to find those resources for free as well. But one thing I love about the real estate industry is people are so willing to share. People love sharing what they're doing, how they did it, because they want other people to have the same success that they've had. And you don't see that everywhere, right? There's a lot of industries and just places where people aren't willing to give up that information like they do in real estate. So if you know anybody that's already in this game, go talk to them, because I guarantee you they're going to share what they know, how they got there, give you some tips on, here's the path I took, or here's the educational resources that I found the most helpful. And they can kind of guide you down that path if you're not sure where to turn for some of that type of educational material. And then I think, connecting up with people, like you guys have both said, telling people what you're doing, getting involved with networking groups and people that are in the business already, so you can continue to learn from them, provide value to their team if they're willing to let you come in and play a role in one of their projects, or in some aspect of their business. You will learn so much through doing that. And that experience is absolutely invaluable, especially when you get to a point where you maybe want to go out on your own, or maybe you find that this is the team of people that you ultimately want to work with. And you find kind of where your skill set complements theirs, so that you can all work together as an effective team. So getting yourself educated, and then getting in with the people that are in the business that can help kind of guide you through the next steps and the right path to take.
Absolutely. Yeah. Leveraging people that are already in your network that that you can just call real quick and talk for 30 minutes. I mean, that's invaluable. All right. So I'll go with you first on this one, Daniel. So syndication a lot of times is kind of a team business, right? I mean, and you see a lot of different structures. Sometimes you'll see a group of 6 people syndicating a deal. Sometimes it's just one person on their own as the team. But I'd like to learn more about do you guys have partners? Is it just yourself doing this business? And then expanding on that to say, is there a specific piece in the business you're specifically focused on? A lot of times there's the one person that their main goal is to raise capital. The other person's an asset manager, and the third person is trying to find deals. So if you could provide kind of some insight on your company structure and what specifically you personally are focusing on in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And want to start off with, it's the value. What value are you adding? Right now for myself, kind of took out of Eric and Rochelle's playbook as far as what you're putting out there. So when I connected with the 2 individuals who are the multifamily investors now, William Madison and Cedric Marlowe, they didn't have a website. They didn't have anything in regards to social media. So I'm like, hey, I build websites, let me be part of that. So right now for me, I'm responsible for the marketing as well as doing outreach in regards to lead generation. So finding ways in regards to that and setting up, that relationship. So for me personally, because I'm not that highly skilled in the underwriting, my job and focus is to, source the leads that do come in, talk to individuals, and then pass them off to either Cedric or of course, William. And everybody is different when it does come to that. Sometimes it may be, where you got to do everything, especially if you're doing it solo. And then there's other times where, it just needs to be spread apart. But the biggest mistake I did was that for my first 3 years going into real estate was that it was like, oh, I had to do this on my own. I have to be by myself. That's the only way that I could thrive. And I could tell you the connections that I've made just by connecting with these two individual folks, I've had stronger connections and stronger relationships in the past. And we've only done this for about 2 to 3 months now. So like I said, this time next year, it's like, whoa, Daniel really did explode. So you're really seeing the beginning stages, but really find people that you can connect with, because the only way that you're going to grow in this business is working with others. And if you really, really want to grow, if you want to do this by yourself, hey, knock yourself out. But if you really want to get into the ranks of Brock, Roschelle, and Eric, all their backstories say, I worked with this individual, or I teamed up with this individual, whether it be husband, college friend, roomie, what have you. So start by finding a team, and then from there expanding out and seeing, what you could bring to the table, right? And it really took me a while to realize, like, I really like talking to people. I really like establishing that relationship. I don't like underwriting. I don't like looking at T12s and rent rolls and seeing the specifics of why this person's water bill is higher than the next. That's ridiculous to me. But I do like getting that conversation set up and having that initial sit down with individuals.
I love it. I love it. Eric?
Yeah, Daniel, I couldn't agree more, man. I think this is an absolute business where you have to kind of team up, right? So that was actually truthfully a challenge of mine, because my wife and I had some success, in single family and some small multis. And I was sort of just in that, I don't know, I guess in that hole of thinking I could do it on my own. And that was one challenge I had to overcome. It was basically realizing go much further faster with a team. And so, after kind of overcoming that, I started joining some masterminds and going to more summits like these and meeting people, right? And just seeing if someone connected with me. And so at first, what I was doing was underwriting, because I have a math background. I feel like I could do it. I'm with you, Daniel. It's certainly not my favorite thing. So I realized over time it was kind of bogging me down, right? Like what I really like to do is talk to people. So my skill now is in marketing. I have a podcast, and I really just love kind of doing stuff like this. And I also, typically with that, love connecting with investors. And so I don't like to say I'm a capital raiser, but I really love and have some talent at it. So it turns out that's just something that comes from enjoying the business and talking to people. But I just kind of have the ability to underwrite, but I don't like it very much. So I found 2 other partners initially. One was excellent. He just loves to travel. He loves to go straight to the properties, right? And mix it up with brokers and stuff. So he's kind of like what I'll define as sort of a deal source person. And then we have an underwriter. And then we most recently brought on an asset manager, because after you get some assets, that becomes a new pinch point, right? Somebody has to kind of manage those assets. So there's 4 of us. And what's cool about this industry is there's lots of different ways to do it. You don't have to do it that way. You can technically be on your own and kind of do your own thing and partner up with some folks on a deal. So there's been a handful of deals where 2 of us from the 4 of the group were invited to go, join, because we have certain skills that they needed. And so our company has this relationship where, if you get invited to a deal and maybe 2 of us are good for that partnership group, that's totally fine, right? So it's kind of cool because it's mix and match. And again, to Rochelle's point, is the pie is huge. There's plenty to go around. And so what you'll find is people are very excited to share their knowledge and, collaborate and talk with you. And so it's really not kind of this like, dog eat dog or whatever you call it. Just like, it's not really like that. People are excited and willing to collaborate, and it's so fun. So that's kind of what I do and how our company is structured. But again, there's lots of different ways to do it. So you kind of have to find what's right for you.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Yeah, I think just to add one quick thing, I mean, a lot with any business, right? When you're breaking into it, you have to wear all the hats and kind of, you got to do everything. And as you grow, this is something, you know, similar we're starting experiences. You can start hiring and you can start creating other partnerships where then you get to focus more on like the things you think you're good at, right? Because there's certain things you're gonna be better at and there's certain things you're gonna enjoy doing more. But you have to get to a certain scale where it's like, okay, now I don't do that anymore because I'm really good at just doing this. I'm just gonna focus on this. But I think in the beginning, you got to be willing to kind of do everything, right? And grow the business so you get to that certain scale. Roschelle, you want to share some insight there, please?
Yeah, sure. So I took a similar path with Eric where I realized quickly that I thought the best way to get myself into a partnership was to bring somebody a deal. So I was like, okay, I'm not a huge numbers person, but I'm going to learn underwriting. And then once I get myself into a deal, you know, then let's talk about the right role for me in that partnership, because let's be honest, I knew underwriting long-term was not going to be my thing. Right. But I was doing what I thought was the best path for me to kind of, you know, get myself into a partnership. So spent some time doing that, which ended up working out for me, right? That is ultimately how I ended up in the partnership that I'm in. And now we've done that shift. And so I focus more on investor relations and communications and marketing, the things that I'm good at. I'm very, you know, system and process focused as well. So I always think about so I did this thing, you know, how can I not do it again? Can I automate it? Can I outsource it? Or if it's something that has to be done and has to be done by me, how can I do it better, faster, you know, easier, quicker next time? So just thinking about what you're good at, playing to those strengths, and then figuring out how you can always do things better. Because I think most of us would agree that when we come into this, we don't always want to replace a job with a job, right? A lot of us are leaving jobs to do real estate full time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we want this to become the new job. Now, for some people that may be okay. But I think a lot of people are looking for, you know, time and money freedom and not just working as many or more hours as you were before when you were, you know, a W-2 employee, as we often say. So just making sure that you can do the work efficiently and effectively while still getting good results and achieving the business plan that you've set forth for that particular asset, but doing things as efficiently and as effectively as possible.
I love it. Love it. Yeah. I like how you mentioned like defining kind of what you're good at and working your way into a partnership with that skill set. So that, you know, you guys all mentioned underwriting. For me, underwriting was actually what I was good at and what I focused on that I enjoyed doing. And that's how I kind of broke into the partnership I got into, was by being good at underwriting, and the other two partners were more on the sales side. And they're like, oh, you like to be on the computer? We don't like it. So let's partner up. So it's kind of finding what you're good at. Like everyone has, you know, a superpower, right? And just really honing in on that and dialing it in specifically to real estate. You know, then you can find partners that are good at the other things and go out and create your own partnership and start doing deals. So I like that a lot. All right, let's shift gears a little bit here and open up a little bit here and talk about your biggest learning lesson. Everyone's had them, right? It's like, it's going to happen, you know, when you're buying a real estate deal, and usually you're targeting, you know, a 10-year hold, 10-year hold, whatever it may be. Stuff you didn't account for is going to happen, right? Like no one expected COVID to come, and there was some impact there. But there's always going to be stuff that happens that you weren't prepared for. So I'd like to hear, like, you know, maybe one learning lesson you've had so far in the business. How'd you overcome it? You know, now what are you doing differently to prepare for that going forward? As you know, especially right now, you know, who knows, the next couple of years, there's some uncertainty out there. We don't really know how bad it's going to be, right? Everyone knows there's going to be some sort of impact, but we don't quite know yet. So I'd like to just hear your input there. We can start with you, Roschelle.
Yeah, so I think for me, it's just making sure you've got the right people on your team. You know, whether that be your partners, whether that be your contractors, your vendors, you know, you'll interact and you'll work with a lot of people in this business to get all the things done that need to be done. And when you find that you've got someone on your team that maybe isn't the right fit, figuring out how to handle that and manage it as you know, quickly and succinctly as you can, so that you're not kind of, you know, dragging on that relationship if things aren't working out for whatever reason. So taking the time up front to, make sure you're bringing the right people into your team is always important. You don't want to rush into things, but then making sure that, if something isn't working the way you had expected it to work, you can have those conversations and figure out that next path forward for how you kind of navigate that situation and figure out where you go from there and what that next step needs to be, whether that's finding, someone else that you need to work with or whatnot. So yeah, just making sure you've got the right partners with you.
Absolutely. That is key. I agree. Daniel, you want to go next?
Yeah. In addition to Roschelle saying the right partners that you're working with, also the right investors. You want to make sure that the investors that you're working with, whether they be accredited or non-accredited, you want to make sure that you have a good relationship with them. When I first got started in real estate and, I'm this eager realtor and I'm like, yeah, call me at 3 a.m. I'm always going to be available. You have to put time back in your pocket. And that was my first mistake. This guy had a list of 60 properties. I have some great comp experience from that because he wanted comps for 60 different properties. And I was up till like 2 o'clock in the morning. He's like, all right, well, when are we setting up time to actually go through these? I'm like, you tell me, I'll find a way. So taking off time, because at the time, and still do, have my W-2 job. And I really risked a lot of time. So we're talking for 2-3 months. This guy never budged, never put in an offer on anything. He always said like, let me think about it. I got to have my contractor out here. And he was showing that. He was showing that, I have a contractor. He needs to look at the property. I have a potential partner that I'm looking to work with. And it was just a lot of wasted time. So, when you're talking with partners, when you're talking with investors, if you don't see yourself in a strong relationship with them at the bare minimum for the next transaction, not even so much for your first transaction, but continuously working with them, because that's where the business is. Real estate is all about referrals and the next opportunity. So if you don't see yourself working with them on the next opportunity, cut the relationship short and move on to the next one. And that's both on the partner side as well as the investor side, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Eric?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. There's a common thread here, right? So probably I'll give 2 mistakes so I can give one really critical one as well. But when I was first starting out, I was on my own, right? I had this company and a website, and I just was kind of looking for deals, and met someone, and we got to talking for a couple of months, and he seemed like a really good guy, and he was really excited to have this deal. So he's like, hey, I found this deal. We've got an offer going. And I was like, yes, this is so cool, because I was so excited for my first deal, right? Like, let's do it. So we kind of get it down the road a little bit, and we almost signed the PSA, meaning the actual contract. And I said, well, I haven't really looked that hard at the underwriting because I got brought in late. I'm like, let's have a look before we really sign the papers here. Started to look at the underwriting, and it was kind of flimsy, honestly. And I kind of brought it to his attention. I'm like, I don't agree on this stuff. And he's like, well, we can make it work. And he just kind of had that attitude, and I don't want to say bad about him. I think I wish him well and I wish him success. I think he was kind of caught up in the moment as well. But I had to say, well, if you're going to do this deal at this price with this underwriting, I can't be part of it. And I'm really sorry. And he's like, well, you're pulling the rug out from under me. He was kind of mad at me. And that was a tough decision because we'd kind of walked through this path. And so since then, because of that, he was mad and he didn't want to partner with me. And it's probably a good thing long term, looking back, that I had the kind of ability to walk away and say no rather than get swept up in the moment, especially on your first deal. So Roschelle and Daniel, right on the money. You have to make sure the partner that you're looking to partner with, one, is scrupulous and has the same values as you, and 2, you guys need to fit personally as well. But then you kind of have to check your people as well, especially early on. You got to do all the homework as well. I mean, the underwriting is difficult, so it's always good to have your own eyes on it. And I'll give one other practical thing. I learned this from a mentor, actually. He bought a property and he forgot that the property would be reassessed, and they didn't have enough in the underwriting for the new tax value. So that's just one example. Is you got to have a little bit of forward thinking to say, kind of, what are some pitfalls here? Insurance will likely go up. Taxes will almost certainly go up. So you kind of have to have those things in your underwriting to think, well, what are the extra potential, pitfalls here? And so, having a good mentor or a good, teammate, maybe who has a little bit more experience, especially early on, is really valuable. So we've all kind of said the same thing. It comes down to people. Select the right people in your corner and make sure you're doing your homework, and you can avoid the mistakes that we made.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, conservative underwriting, especially in currently, I mean, that is so key. And having peers look over your underwriting, I mean, it's a great habit to get into. I'll share a quick 30-second mistake I made on my first deal because it reminded me of it. The first syndication deal we did, 89 units. I'm doing the underwriting. I'm kind of heading up due diligence. Long story short, we do the deal, end up having to evict 50% of the tenants in the first 3 months. So we blew through the $100,000 we had in reserves that's supposed to get us through our hold period. Blew through that. So we're at zero in the bank account. Ultimately had to hold back cash flow to refund the account to get us back. COVID hits, 20% of our tenants don't pay rent for a year. So a lot of learning lessons within there, right? That was our first deal. We've gotten over it now. And, luckily we bought it at the right price. That was the first deal though. And there's going to be mistakes. I mean, you try to avoid mistakes, but every deal you do, I mean, it's another notch in your belt, right? Every deal you do, you're going to learn more. And eventually you're going to get to a point where you're confident on everything. It takes some time. But you have to, that's why, it was a mistake we made, right? But being extra conservative on the front end and your numbers and just assuming and not pushing everything to the last penny, over 10 years, something's going to go wrong. No matter how great of a deal it is, how great of a location, something's going to go wrong. So plan for that something going wrong. You'd rather have that extra money sitting there, or that extra percent you didn't account for back when that thing does go wrong. So that's just one little piece there. So, all right. So taking on to that, I got an additional question I kind of just thought of here was the people that are like on the fence, right? Like they don't know like what, if they want to get into syndication, should they just keep on going out, buying properties on their own? Could you share maybe, a few things, pros and cons, whether to, the pros of getting into being a syndicator yourself, or just going out and buying properties on your own? What are kind of the benefits and downsides in doing that? We'll start with you, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to understand that, this business isn't for everyone, right? So like sometimes a rosy picture can be painted that anybody can do it, and you can make a lot of wealth, and that's true, but it depends on your maybe personal situation, right? Or how willing you are to put in the time type of thing. Because a lot of times what's unfortunate about this is it takes a lot of time before you get your first deal, and then truly it takes a lot of time before you really build wealth in the syndication model. So I would say in some certain instances where maybe you're really hard up for cash flow, it might be good to sort of do some smaller stuff. The other thing is, some people like to have all, be able to really manage the entire project and really like have hands-on. And so sometimes people like that. I would encourage to look at maybe a single family, something like that. So it just kind of depends on the person, but I think it's important to sort of look at yourself and evaluate, is this business right for me, or would I prefer to have a quad down the street? So like there's pros and cons to kind of all of it, but you just have to do some self-reflection to say, what do I really want out of this? One, what is my financial goals? And then two is, can I really buy a purchase out of my market? Can I work with the team very well? Can I manage investors? And that type of thing. And if the answer is no to some of those, then maybe you can look at a different avenue. And that's what's the cool thing about real estate is, we're talking about syndication, but there's literally hundreds of ways to make money. And that's what makes it a cool, place to invest. So it's hard to answer really specifically just broadly, but it's kind of person to person. Some people would probably be better off in a different avenue.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's not for everyone, but it is a great business. Roschelle, let's go to you.
Yeah, well, I would totally agree with Eric that it's not the active management of real estate is not for everyone. Passive investing can be, right? And there's lots of ways to do that, whether that be in syndications or, there's REITs and things like that, depending on where you're at in your financial journey and what you have to invest. There's a lot of different options there. So I would never tell people you're not right to invest in real estate, but it's figuring out how you should invest. And again, what are your goals? What are your desires? What do you like to do? What do you not like to do? And then figuring out, do you want to be more on the active side, or do you want to be solely a passive investor? And then figuring out, which of those paths is better for you. And it can be both, right? A lot of active people are passive, and sometimes some people start passive and move over to the active side. So it's not like you have to, choose one destination and follow it to your last day, but you can kind of figure that out as you go as well. Maybe you get into a project more a syndication or something more on the active side of things, and you realize I'd rather not do this side of the business. Let me go put my money and my trust with people that have done this before, that are good at it, that enjoy it, and will let them earn the returns on my money for me, so I don't have to do all of that work myself. So I think it's really figuring out ultimately what your goals are and what your risk tolerance is, what time you have to spare. Because even a lot of people, when they're moving into syndications or real estate, already have a job. And so figuring out how you're going to work that additional time that it takes to do that business into your day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month schedule can be a challenge and a big drain on your time resources. So a couple different factors to kind of take into consideration there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's an additional level of responsibility for sure, taking on other people's money, right? I mean, it's a great avenue for people to invest in, but you have to be ready for that level of responsibility and be confident enough that you're going to, be a steward of their capital. So I totally agree. Daniel?
Yeah, just tagging off Eric and Rochelle here. In regards to it, like I mentioned before, YouTube University, look at, what an active investor does throughout the day, what they do throughout the week. And that goes into as well as talking with them, hey, if you're working a W-2 full-time job or even part-time job, or even if you just have life responsibilities, figure out how that's going to put into your day. As you're writing out your financial journey, as far as, what it's going to look like a year from now, also look at your schedule. Hey, what time do I even have in the day to either reach out to leads, or what time do I have in the day to do underwriting? Because as you heard from Brock, Rochelle, and Eric, underwriting, is not the popular thing, but it's the popular thing to get started. So figuring out that avenue for you, whether it be active, whether it be passive, just figure out like, hey, where is going to be my niche at? Where can I fit in at? And what does that actually look like? And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is, if you're an introvert, studying other people's actions, studying other people's motives, but really take that extrovert side and really just start connecting with individuals and say like, hey, whether you're working, hey, I've got a W-2 job, or I'm working from home as a single parent, how is my life supposed to look? Whether I'm actively investing or even passively investing, and take a stab at it. If you're in a market where you see FSBO signs for sale by owner, call them up, and say like, hey, I'm a potential investor, wanting to get an idea as far as what this, what your house is going for, and having that conversation and ask yourself, hey, could I do this in regards to just reaching out? Because it's just a simple phone call or, maybe a potential follow-up. But as Eric and Rochelle pointed out, you need to figure out your avenue. That's kind of like what took me back into finally getting into the mix of things where I'm currently at right now. So now it's like, okay, I know what I must do, but you really need to figure out yourself. And this is not the business where you need to have a certain criteria. As long as you can talk, and as long as you like to speak, and as long as you like to breathe, you'll be fine in this business.
I love it. All right, I'm expand on. I'm reading some of these comments in the chat here. What is one? It could be a course, a podcast, a book, maybe several. But what is like for someone that wants to specifically? There's tons of real estate content out there, right? I mean, books, podcasts, courses. There's thousands of them, hundreds of thousands, probably. And is there one like someone that wants to specifically learn syndication? Is there a course or a book or a podcast, something you'd recommend people check out? Daniel, you want to lead it off?
Yeah, absolutely. If you haven't heard of Bigger Pockets already, get on it. Absolutely. But Rochelle put in the chat as well. Mike Morawski, like you're at this summit right now, really start looking back at some of his old videos, connect with them. I got this man's cell phone number. He told me directly, hey, if you need anything, feel free to reach out to me. So whether it be going through his courses, whether it be checking out his podcast, but you need to start connecting with individuals. But really the biggest thing is start with Mike, and just have that introduction call with them. Hey, Mike, I was part of the summit, loved it, loved Daniel and Roschelle and Eric and Brock, just some name drops, and, mentioned to him as far as what you're looking to do, and really just go forward from there and ask that question. Hey, I've already read 2 books on multifamily syndication. What should I be doing next?
Totally agree. Yeah, Mike puts out some great content. I mean, and the more you go in with like one person too, right? You buy a course or something, that'll build rapport, and you never know what that could lead to down the road as well. Roschelle, you want to share yours?
Yeah, so I'll tag on to Daniel's, but I'll add another one too. So I was part of Mike's coaching program for a number of months. That's where I learned everything I know about underwriting. And so he does a really great job of spending that one-on-one time with you. He's also got group coaching. So there's different, levels and options you can choose from. And he's very flexible with his coaching program and plans, which I really, really liked. So yeah, definitely check into that if you're looking for some more, in-depth guidance and coaching and mentoring. Mike's a great resource for that. I've also looked through and taken some courses through the Michael Blanc program as well. He's got a lot of great resources and courses out there as well. He puts out a lot of good educational content. So that might be something you want to look into as well.
Hey, Michael Blanc's got some good. He's very analytical, very underwriting, and he's got a good underwriting model too. I started with using that one quite a bit. Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all kind of mentioned some really good tools. I usually point, I'm kind of a reader, right? So I like to just have a very solid picture of here's where I'd go. So I always give 2 books. One is Raising Capital for Real Estate by Hunter Thompson. It's kind of the soup to nuts of raising capital. And he also covers a little bit of everything, right? And then I think Joe Fairless's book, although I'm not a huge fan of his writing, it's called Best Ever Apartment Syndication Book, I think. It's really, really solid. And there's some really, really good information there. I mean, he even creates lists of stuff like questions to ask investors. So that would be probably the book I'd recommend the most if you're starting out, because he just covers a million topics. But yeah, I'd encourage you to reach in or look into some coaching. That's pretty helpful. If you really want to invest in yourself, I totally agree. So just to tack on, those are the 2 books I usually recommend.
And I'll echo that. I mean, yeah, the Joe Fairless's book, that's what I was going to say. I mean, that's for syndication specifically. That's the number one. I mean, it's literally like a huge textbook, and it's just A to Z everything about syndication. So if you're trying to like specifically learn syndication, I agree. People should check that book out. All right. So I think we'll do one more. We're going to do one more here. And I think I'd like to end it with selling why. And I know we've touched on this a little bit throughout some of the questions, but like getting people, we've talked about why people should get into syndication, maybe why they shouldn't, but what is like sell syndication, right? Like someone, why you love it, like why someone should get into it, should be excited to get into it, what you can accomplish in syndication, just kind of like take the other side of it and really sell like why someone should jump in as a general partner in a syndication. Eric, let's start with you.
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of easy to be excited about, right? Like it's also kind of the reason why I think selling investors is kind of easy. And I use the word selling kind of loosely, right? Because we're not really selling. This is an investment. So what I like to say about syndication is it's truly a team sport, and it brings a lot of people together. And the coolest thing about syndication is what you're offering to someone. It's not like you're selling them a vacuum, right? Or something that's like, or something that's just kind of not that important or maybe not that valuable. What you're selling them is an opportunity. You're putting someone's potential hard-earned money to use for them. And so you're basically teaming up to all build wealth together. So it's a pretty exciting space to be in, because what we're selling is a very proven tool, a very proven asset class. And it's just kind of exciting to all work together and be together. Specifically for general partnership, I guess what I would say is you get to build some wealth through your knowledge and skills and time while using other people's money alongside yours. I like to invest in all my deals, so I'm kind of on the passive end, active side as well. But if you didn't have the capital for one deal or whatever, then you can provide the opportunity while still building your wealth. So there's kind of a lot to be excited about in this business.
Well said. I agree. Daniel?
Yeah, really just coming down actually to my personal why. You're creating generational wealth. I got a 13-year-old son. He's my focus, the love of my life. I'm actually getting married on November 9th. So, you're building this legacy, getting into multifamily syndication, not only for yourself, but generations to come. So your biggest, finding your why first. Why should you be making calls? Why should you be, doing further research on multifamily syndication? Once you can answer that and go beyond your limitations, if you're like, hey, I'm just trying to get out of my 9-to-5 job. Okay. Are you trying to create 9-to-5 jobs for other individuals? Or are you trying to build a platform where others can come to you for advice? Are you trying to be in a position where you're, limiting homelessness? So don't think it's like, okay, I'm putting money in my pocket as a GP or LP, but think about what you can be doing for others, what you can be doing for the community. The biggest thing I love about this, and not trying to get too emotional here, but I love when people are saying like, hey, I got in this business to give back. So, and you're hearing about these stories, you're hearing about the success, of others just being able to say like, hey, I was able to donate, for like 300 families during Thanksgiving. And it's like, wow. And you did that with real estate. Like that to me is like, oh man, I see why folks get into this. So, find your why first. But to Eric's point, it's not selling. If anything, you're trying to sell yourself why you should be getting up early and finding that routine of really getting into this business. But at the end of the day, focus on your why. That's all I could say. Focus on your why in this.
Love it. Roschelle, you want to close us out here?
Yeah, I'll definitely kind of echo some of the comments that were said earlier and add on to that. So, there's a million great reasons to invest in real estate and invest in syndications. But I think, for me, what really resonates the most with me is kind of what Daniel said, where it's like, I have the ability through this to change the trajectory of my family's future, right? I can give my kids opportunities. I can teach them things that they're not going to learn in school and give them opportunities through this that are going to serve our family for generations to come. And I can share that with other people, right? I can bring in limited partners that can invest and grow their wealth and share that with more people. And so you're changing so many people's lives through this that wouldn't have had these opportunities in other ways, that it's truly life-changing. And then good things, money's a tool, right? And you give people those monetary resources, and most people feel compelled to do good things with those. So a lot of people use those additional resources to give back to charitable organizations or, other philanthropic causes. And all of that collectively really just makes communities and societies and our world in general a better place to live. So, it's really powerful what this seemingly, small thing can do over the course of, many people, many projects. It's just got a really big impact in a lot of different ways that you wouldn't, think of off the top of your head.
Totally agree. The sky's the limit with this business. I mean, that's what's so great about it is there's so much you can do. There's so much positive impact you can make, generational wealth. I mean, it's awesome. There's a lot of possibilities. So, all right. Well, I appreciate you all being on the panel here and everyone joining. I learned some stuff myself here, and I think I'm excited to see what else Mike's got in store for the rest of the weekend for this event. So yeah, that's it. It looks like some people are dropping their contact info there as well. Connect with people. I mean, the great part about these events is you can grab people's contact info. You can hop on a separate call after the event and kind of get to know each other better and see where that leads. There's a lot of partnerships that come from events like this. So I'd highly suggest reaching out to people that you connected with and capitalizing on those relationships. So appreciate everyone for joining. That is it.
Thank you.
Impressive. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to the RNG Radio Show. Be sure to like and subscribe for more episodes and future content. If you'd like to learn more, visit us at danielumstead.com. Stay blessed, my fellow millionaires.